Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are cracking open a set of sources that feel less like a business book and more like, I don't know, a biological invasion manual.
That's a good way to put it.
If you've ever felt like your digital life is an operating system just running against your will, that your phone, your feed, it just knows exactly how to make you anxious or angry or impulsive.
Then you're not paranoid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are just facing an opponent who understands your core biological programming, maybe better than you understand it yourself.
And that's the whole gripping premise here. Our mission today for you, the listener, is to really pull back the curtain on these secrets of the human brain that are, actively being weaponized for profit. We're doing a deep dive into the ancient algorithm by Rishi Khullar.
Yeah, and it's a piece of work that ruthlessly argues that success, in this digital age, it really relies on hacking our outdated biological wiring.
The central idea, the thing everything else is built on, is that we are all running what Khullar calls Stone Age software in a completely hyper-engineered modern world.
Right, so we feel like we have conscious free will.
We think we do.
But the truth, at least according to this analysis, is that our decisions, what we buy, what we click on, what we end up sharing, are overwhelmingly driven by these ancient biological reflexes.
And the architects of the digital space, they've figured out exactly how to hit those reflexes on command. It creates this fundamental and, he calls it a catastrophic mismatch.
And Khullar is just incredibly blunt about the environment we're all trying to navigate. He just states it plainly.
Yeah.
The ecosystem is occupied.
He identifies 4 what he calls apex predators.
Yeah.
Google, Meta, Amazon, and Apple, FA.
FAA.
And they have already terraformed the entire digital environment to their advantage. They control the algorithms, they own the network effects, they hold infinite capital, and they have total surveillance through our data.
And the biological analogy he draws is just so stark, especially if you're, a small business or a startup, or even just an ambitious creator. He says you are effectively a single-cell organism floating in an ocean patrolled by whales.
And these whales have infinite energy capital and total surveillance data. So you just cannot compete on their terms. It's impossible.
He kind of dismisses the traditional approach to growth, right? What most of us would call marketing.
Yeah, buying ads, following the latest SEO rules, best practices.
He calls that funding your own executioner. You're just handing money to the whales to paddle faster. You cannot outspend a giant.
Which means the competition has to move to an entirely different plane.
Okay, so if competing with capital with money is impossible, what's the alternative?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. Khullar argues that the only way a small, agile organism competes and survives in nature is through adaptation and infection.
Infection.
Yes. The solution isn't to try and beat the digital algorithms of the giants, which are always shifting anyway. It's to bypass them completely by understanding and hacking the ancient algorithms of the human brain.
Because those haven't changed in 10,000 years.
Exactly. That's the critical backdoor.
And that leads to the core concept of this whole thing.
Yeah.
The goal is not that gentle, political science approach of nudge theory.
No, not at all. It's about achieving what he calls environmental determinism.
So you're engineering the user's environment, the digital space they're in, your product, your landing page, so that buying or clicking or sharing is the only available biological outcome.
The decision shouldn't even be asked for. It should be automatic, predetermined by the environment you've built.
This idea of predetermination is pretty startling. And to even get there, we have to accept the foundational premise of Chapter 1, which is the mismatch theory.
Right. And Khullar frames the state of the modern human as a kind of fundamental tragedy. Our brains were optimized for a world that, vanished around the end of the last ice age.
Maybe 10, 12,000 years ago.
We were perfectly adapted for life in these small, stable tribes, maybe 100, 150 people max.
And in that world, resources were brutally scarce. So constant hunger was the norm.
And dangers were physical, they were immediate, and they were clear. A lion, a rival tribe, a poisonous berry. The brain's core function was just survival, conserving energy, and, social cohesion within that tiny group.
And now we live in a world that is the metabolic opposite of that.
Completely. Infinite choices, exposure to infinite strangers. We're constantly bombarded by engineered superstimuli.
And the threats are all abstract and global.
So that gap, the gap between the environment we were built for and the one we actually live in, that defines the mismatch. And he argues this mismatch is the source of all modern digital vulnerability.
He stresses, though, that the user isn't inherently broken. They're just an outdated organism trying to process a new habitat.
Exactly. The results of this maladaptation, they show up as these core anxieties that, well, the architects of contagion can then exploit. These aren't defects in us. They're perfectly functioning ancient circuits that are just misfiring because of the wrong inputs.
Okay, let's look at those misfires, because this is where the vulnerability really starts.
Yeah.
Let's take anxiety. Our threat detection systems, which Khullar nicknames the Night Watchman, they were designed to scan the horizon for predators. But now they're just constantly firing off at these abstract inputs.
Like an email notification from your boss.
Or a news headline about a crisis halfway across the world, or a stock price going up and down. The body reacts as if a saber-toothed cat just walked into the room.
And the problem isn't the threat itself, which is abstract. The problem is the constancy of it. The night watchman is never allowed to rest.
And that permanent state of low-grade biological panic, it makes us crave external solutions. Anything that promises to just turn the alarm off.
Another huge vulnerability is loneliness. Our tribal circuits are designed for cohesion, for maintaining our standing within a group of, 100 people whose faces we can actually see and touch?
They can't process the concept of 5,000 digital friends or followers.
Not at all. You can have this huge reach, but the ancient brain still feels starved for real caloric connection, for that verification.
And that creates this profound sense of digital loneliness, a hunger that can never be satisfied by a like or a comment.
And that hunger is a massive point of entry for platforms that sell connection or belonging, or for products that claim they'll get you into some high-status group. The brain is looking for a village, but all it gets is a flickering scream.
And finally, there's overwhelm, which leads directly to what he calls decision fatigue.
Right. The Stone Age brain was optimized for really simple resource-saving choices. Do I eat the red berry or the brown nut? 2 choices, maybe.
And today we face 10,000 stocks, 50 different kinds of toothpaste, endless video libraries.
The brain sees decision-making as metabolically expensive. It costs precious glucose. So when it's faced with infinite choice, the brain just initiates a metabolic shutdown. It chooses paralysis or avoidance.
And that's the key opportunity. When the user is paralyzed, they default to the path of least resistance.
Which is doing nothing, or following the loudest, simplest signal, even if that signal is completely irrational.
So, okay, we've established the foundation here. The user is predictable, they're anxious, and they're cognitively exhausted. Which leads to this fundamental shift in method that Khullar advocates for. He insists the method has to be amoral.
Yeah, that word is so central.
Why amoral?
Because he argues that traditional business models, they waste energy on moral judgment or emotional appeals like brand loyalty. Evolutionary biology doesn't judge intent. It only measures one thing: transmission. Did the gene spread? Did the virus infect the next host? That's it.
So the goal is not to appeal to the conscious, rational mind.
No, that part of the brain is usually too busy or too tired to care.
The goal is to hit the execute button, which is located deep in the primitive brainstem, and bypass logic entirely.
And to structure how we hit that button, Khullar borrows and then fundamentally translates a pretty well-known behavioral science framework, Dr. B.J. Fogg's foundational formula.
All right, above BMAPT2. Behavior equals motivation plus ability plus prompt. You need all 3 to happen at the same time.
Exactly. And Khullar respects the structure, but he views it through this cold biological lens of survival, caloric costs, and sensory dominance. It really strips away all the academic politeness.
Let's break down that evolutionary translation then, because this is really the operational model for contagion.
Okay, so first, motivation is translated into the hijack.
Right. So in standard marketing, motivation is about creating desire, selling features, promising benefits. He says that's too slow and too expensive.
His approach understands that motivation isn't something you create, it's something you redirect. It is biological energy that is already running.
So we target those existing, misfiring biological energies, the maladaptations we just talked about.
Exactly. We exploit the pre-existing panic of the night watchman, or the lust of what he calls the swinging single. Motivation is just biological fuel, and the winning strategy is to redirect that high-energy instinct toward your product as the only survival tool for that specific, immediate biological need.
Wait, okay. If we're defining motivation as purely biological fuel-like, a redirection of panic or lust, doesn't that fundamentally remove the idea of selling genuine long-term value?
Khullar would say that's precisely the point. The long-term value might be the result of the product, but the sale is always short-term and biological. The night watchman doesn't care if your retirement plan is good in 30 years.
It only cares if clicking buy now, right now, relieves that anxiety spike about not having enough resources.
You sell the instant anesthetic, not the future cure.
Okay. Number 2, ability is translated into energy conservation.
Right. Standard business views ability as, usability or skills.
Hmm.
The Stone Age brain views ability as calories, specifically glucose. Khullar just states that the brain is inherently and ruthlessly lazy.
Because for 99% of human history, energy was scarce.
So if your product, your checkout process, your onboarding, if it requires willpower or complex thinking or any perceived caloric effort, the brain instinctively sees it as a threat and just blocks it.
The rule is simple. Engineer zero friction. It had to be the pre-cut vegetable.
If it's easy, if it conserves glucose, the brain will pause it. If it requires effort, they will leave. You just cannot rely on willpower because that resource is chemically gone by midday.
And number 3, prompt is translated into the superstimulus.
A standard prompt is just, a notification or an ad, but a biological prompt is a signal of a critical, immediate threat or opportunity that demands attention.
And as we said, the modern brain has developed defensive blindness banner blindness to all the polite ads. Polite nudges are basically invisible.
So to breach that sensory gate, you need a superstimulus. This is an artificial signal that is intentionally louder, brighter, and more urgent than nature ever intended.
He references that biological phenomenon of a bird ignoring its own egg for a giant, brightly patterned plastic one.
Or a fish preferring an impossibly large plastic mating target. Our sensory systems get hijacked by signals that are engineered to be overpowering. Think of how Doritos are engineered to be louder and sweeter than broccoli. It just overloads the reward system.
So the formula for infection is this perfect alignment. You present a superstimulus, the prompt, that offers immediate guaranteed relief to a specific maladaptation, the motivation, via a path of zero friction, the ability.
And when those three align, Khullar argues, the behavior isn't just likely, it is inevitable.
This brings us to, I think, the most detailed and valuable part of his blueprint, understanding the anatomy of the consumer's mind.
Yeah, the idea that the user is not a single rational decision maker. It is a colony of 7 competing biological actors, or subselves, and each one is optimized for a specific survival task.
And it's fascinating how much he demands specialization here. The golden rule is crystal clear. The fundamental error is selling to the wrong subself.
You have to identify which actor is at the control panel at any given moment and only broadcast on their frequency. If you try to sell a stock market guide using a sexy image, you're confusing the circuits. The brain just ignores you. Specialization wins.
Okay, let's break down this taxonomy, starting with the most primal fear circuit.
The night watchman.
Its biological mandate is absolute. Keep the organism alive, scan for physical hazards, and hoard resources against scarcity.
And its modern maladaptation is catastrophizing. It treats abstract risks, the volatile housing market, negative political news, a complex software update, as a physical, lethal threat.
So Khullar suggests harnessing this panic by selling the prevention of catastrophe.
Crucially, he says you should never sell peace of mind. Peace is low arousal. It kills motivation. Instead, you position your product as the only necessary wall between the user and the abyss.
And the tactics involve urgent, fear-based language. Final warning, impending doom.
And using high contrast colors like red and black to mimic a biological alarm state. You see it in financial news tickers all the time.
So we're basically turning this generalized, persistent anxiety that people feel into a targeted sales channel. That's incredibly efficient, but it sounds exhausting for the user.
It is exhausting, but it works because the anxiety is already there. It's already running. You are just providing the release valve.
Okay, so next is 2, the compulsive.
Whose mandate is protection from microscopic threats, disease, parasites, contamination.
In the ancestral environment, that was critical for survival. But in our hyper-sterile modern world, this circuit is hyperactive. It manifests as disgust sensitivity.
Obsessive cleaning, revulsion to body odors, generalized germophobia. This drives massive industries from skincare to, specialized cleaning products.
And to hijack the compulsive, you have to trigger the ick.
He calls this pathogen porn. Zoomed-in images of dusty vents, close-ups of pores, microscopic views of germs. You create that visceral contamination signal, often without saying a word, and then you offer your product as the sterile barrier.
The cleanse, or the ritual that restores biological purity and safety.
Exactly.
Okay, moving to social drivers, we get to 3. The team player.
Its mandate is simple. Avoid exile. because being alone meant certain death for early humans.
And its maladaptation is profound FOMO, fear of missing out. The brain interprets digital silence or not getting invitations as tribal banishment. It's starving for connection verification.
So the strategy is to monetize the fear of exile. You subtly or explicitly show group activities online or physical where the user is conspicuously absent.
You sell membership, not utility. The purchase is framed as the necessary ticket back into the tribe, validating their social standing, proving they're in the know.
It's why limited edition drops and invite-only platforms are so viral.
And then the competitive instinct is driven by the go-getter.
Right. The biological mandate here is to improve your rank for better resources, better territory, and higher quality mates.
Its modern maladaptation is comparison addiction. It was built to compare against maybe 50 familiar faces in the tribe. Now it compares against the infinite strangers on social media.
Which leads to a permanent, unresolvable state of status anxiety.
This is the circuit where price is a feature, not a cost.
Exactly. You are selling envy. The tactics involve creating explicit artificial hierarchies. Bronze, silver, gold, platinum, elite. The product itself becomes a signal of dominance that the user then gets to broadcast.
People aren't buying the software. They're buying the feeling that they are better than the person next to them.
That's why verified statuses and profile badges are so powerful.
Now for the short-term drives, we get to 5. The swinging single.
This sub-self is focused purely on reproduction and seeking novelty. Its maladaptation is impulse and addiction. It's wired for short-term gratification and is easily hijacked by superstimuli.
So the strategy here is the peacock display. You associate your product with mating potential and novelty things that signal youth, health, availability.
Logic is the enemy here. Because this sub-self is optimized for speed and immediacy, it absolutely demands one-click gratification. If the purchase process requires filling out a single complex form, the swinging single is already gone. It's moved on.
What about those seeking stability? That's 6. The good spouse.
Whose biological mandate is to maintain the pair bond and ensure commitment. The modern world, with its endless media portrayals of perfect relationships, constantly triggers insecurity loops. It causes the user to fear the bond is weak or their partner might leave.
The resulting strategy is the commitment signal.
You frame the purchase as a ritual or tangible proof of investment in the bond, like buying the diamond, the annual family holiday, or the dedicated pizza night meal kit. If the user hesitates to buy that expensive signal, they subconsciously fear they're signaling abandonment, which triggers that powerful insecurity loop.
And finally, probably the most powerful motivator of all, 7. The parent.
Tasked with ensuring the survival and prosperity of the DNA, the modern maladaptation here is the good parent guilt.
The ancient village of alloparents, grandparents, aunts, community members helping raise children, is gone.
And that leaves the isolated parent with this crushing guilt for not being able to manage every single developmental and educational demand.
Which leads to the hijack strategy of the outsourced village.
You target the guilt directly by selling development, protection, or future success. You position your product, whether it's a screen time app, a bespoke tutor, or an organic meal kit, as the necessary allo parent that relieves the metabolic and emotional burden.
You're selling relief from guilt, which is a very high arousal negative state.
The message is just crystal clear. Audit your product, identify which of these 7 biological actors you're servicing, and then broadcast only on that single frequency. If you confuse the subself, the brain enters paralysis, and the sale is lost. Perfection of execution lies in hyper-specialization.
Okay, so now that we've hijacked motivation, we have to address ability, which, as you said, Khullar defines as the ruthless conservation of calories. If the user requires willpower, you lose the sale.
Right, and this section breaks down into 2 opposite but equally essential strategies: zero friction entry and high friction exit.
Let's start with Chapter 4. Grease the slide. Zero friction entry. So we are designing the environment to be so smooth that the decision to buy is just automatic.
This is environmental determinism at its most practical. Khullar's core concept here is the pre-cut vegetable principle.
Right. Think about the high friction of buying a whole pineapple, taking it home, preparing it.
It's an expensive caloric choice. Now contrast that with the zero barrier of a tub of pre-cut, ready-to-eat mango. Your product has to be the pre-cut mango. The barrier to entry must be non-existent.
And the tactical playbook here is about removing the knife. Every single step that requires conscious cognitive effort from the user.
First up, the no data protocol. Typing requires glucose. Every single field in a sign-up form is a conversion killer because it activates the rational brain,
To bypass this, we use sign up with Google or Apple.
which scrapes the existing stored data from the apex predator's systems. This eliminates the need for the user to type their name, email, or even create a password. You're essentially stealing stored energy from the giants to reduce the caloric cost for your user.
Then there's the default option. Asking a yes or no question costs energy. So Khullar says never ask, you pre-select the yes.
For example, the annual plan is pre-checked or the newsletter sign-up is automatically selected. Unchecking the box requires cognitive energy, it's a conscious caloric investment, and most users just won't exert that effort.
The brain just assumes the default is the safe, established path.
And of course, the ultimate expression of zero friction, the one-click purchase. Amazon patented it for a reason. It is the behavioral perfect storm.
The transaction has to happen faster than the night watchman can wake up to rationalize the cost or trigger the pain of paying.
That's fascinating. If we're looking at the brainstem logic, what exactly is happening in those few seconds between the click and the rational realization of the cost?
Khullar explains it as the exploitation of metabolic lag time. The conscious mind processes payment, that painful realization that resources are leaving the tribe too slowly.
The traditional physical act of reaching for your wallet, typing the number, clicking confirm, those steps create enough friction for the night watchman to wake up and shout, "Threat."
But when the payment mechanism is invisible, stored, and automatic, the pain of paying is deferred.
Which allows the short-term subselves, like the swinging single, to achieve gratification before the long-term rational circuit can override the impulse. Storing the card isn't just convenience, it's an anesthetic for the wallet.
Now, we flip that script completely with Chapter 5. The Alcatraz Protocol. High-friction exit. If entry is frictionless, exit has to be a biological nightmare.
This is the Hotel California model for subscriptions. The Stone Age brain is so focused on energy conservation, it will pay a small, constant pain, the monthly subscription cost, if the perceived caloric cost of canceling is higher. You're relying on the user's cognitive exhaustion.
And this relies on the garage principle. Just like we might put junk food in the garage to prevent the high caloric cost of going out and buying more, we treat canceling as a bad habit and put the cancel button deep in the figurative garage.
The tactics are designed to create a churn labyrinth. The first layer is menu burial.
Burying the cancel link 3 or 4 levels deep. Settings, account, privacy, advanced. Every click is a caloric spike, a knife.
By the time the user finds the actual button, their motivation is depleted, and many will just postpone the process until the next billing cycle.
And then there is the brilliant use of the human shield.
The team player subself is terrified of social confrontation, so you don't allow digital cancellation. You require a phone call or a live chat with a representative who's trained to negotiate retention.
And that requirement alone triggers massive social energy expenditure.
The anticipation of social awkwardness or having to explain oneself and justify why you're leaving, it often stops the action entirely. The user decides the $15 monthly cost is less painful than 5 minutes of social confrontation.
And if they manage to navigate the labyrinth and face the human shield, the final barrier is the loss aversion trigger.
This is the moment to fire a super stimulus to trigger the night watchman's hoarding instinct.
So this is the "are you sure" message, but it's loaded. You have to threaten actual loss.
Loss of data, loss of years of gold status, or loss of progress achieved. The idea of losing something they already possess, even if they weren't using it, is far more painful to the ancient brain than the cost of keeping it.
It's the core engine of the modern gym model. Zero friction entry, auto debit, followed by a cancellation process that requires a notarized letter and a personal explanation.
We have motivation locked down and ability cleared. Now we need that critical moment of convergence, the prompt. Khullar insists we have to breach the sensory defenses using a super stimulus.
Right, because polite, standard ads are just filtered out by defensive blindness.
This is the sensory overwrite mechanism, the idea that the brain just cannot help but prioritize the artificial stronger signal over the real one. Your marketing inputs have to be the digital sugar, the salt, fat, sweetness engineered to be louder, brighter, and more urgent than anything the natural world offers.
The tactical application of this is incredibly powerful. Take the red badge.
Nature uses the color red for 2 primary signals: danger, blood, threats, and reward. Ripe fruit, resources.
A high-saturation red notification, badge, or banner on an app is a visual itch that triggers the night watchman.
It creates a state of visual tension the brain must scratch. It mimics a social or survival opportunity that, in the ancestral environment, would have been mandatory to check. We see it with that infamous red dot on Facebook, LinkedIn, Discord.
It's not just an alert. It's a biological imperative designed to generate a cortisol hit and force engagement.
And related to that is urgency override. To avoid the brain processing the message logically, we use words like alert, urgent, flash sale, or live.
These high arousal words trigger the cortisol response because the brain immediately defaults to the assumption that breaking news equals critical, time-sensitive survival information. We're constantly priming the night watchman to panic about missing out.
Beyond the signal itself, we need to talk about curation. Chapter 6 introduces the choice paradox. The core argument is simple: the tyranny of freedom.
Since decision-making is high caloric cost, infinite choices paralyze the brain and lead to anxiety.
Therefore, we must be the tyrant who curates the cage. We have to design the environment so the user has only one viable exit: the purchase. The tactic is the Deep 5 protocol.
Never offer 20 options. Offer 3, maximum 5, good, better, best.
And crucial for the exhausted brain, we use the outsourced brain tactic. The brain is willing to offload the caloric cost of decision-making. We use badges like most popular, editor's choice, or recommended by experts.
So the user doesn't have to analyze the 3 options, they just follow the external authority signal.
Khullar calls this the Costco effect. The average grocery store offers 40 types of toothpaste, which leads to decision fatigue.
And often you just choose the cheapest option to minimize risk.
But Costco offers one high-volume, well-vetted bulk pack, and the user buys it with zero analysis because they trust the curator. Be Costco the trusted tyrant rather than the confusing grocery store.
And once a user has committed to an item, Khullar advises immediately closing the gap. Remove all navigation and hide related products.
Because comparison triggers the go-getter and the good spouse. Is there a better one? Am I settling? You have to shut those high-calorie cost comparison circuits down immediately before they derail the momentum.
Finally, in Chapter 8, we look at the notification's siege timing. It's not just what you send, but when you send the superstimulus.
This relies on understanding variable reward and the circadian attack.
The brain is addicted to unpredictability. This is the slot machine effect.
Right. Predictable rewards like opening the fridge and the light turning on give zero dopamine. But variable rewards, the unpredictable ping of a notification, the random nature of an endless scroll, they generate massive dopamine spikes and reinforce the checking behavior. We have to engineer uncertainty into the product's feedback loop.
And we map this variable reward to the biological clock for the highest impact.
The morning spike around 7 a.m. is the first attack window. Cortisol is naturally spiking, and the night watchman is intensely scanning for overnight threats or missed opportunities. You have to be the first input, the morning briefing, to claim that crucial mental real estate before the user even gets out of bed.
The second key window is the twilight zone, 10 p.m. and later.
This is the willpower trough. When willpower is depleted, it's prime time for the swinging single impulse shopping and the night watchman doom scrolling and anxiety triggers.
This is when you send flash sale notifications or see who viewed your profile prompts, catching the user when they lack the cognitive energy to resist impulse.
And always, always use the curiosity gap in the notification. Never close the loop. Don't say, your package has been delivered. That closes the loop. Engagement ends.
Say there's an update on your delivery or a friend mentioned you. The brain hates incomplete information and will force the user to open the app to resolve that internal tension, even if the content is trivial.
So we've controlled the internal environment. Now we move to zero-budget distribution. The ultimate goal of contagion is turning the users we just acquired into vectors who spread the virus simply by using the product.
This is Sherdo's engineering. Sherdo is a basic reproduction number, the average number of people one infected person infects. The goal is to push this viral coefficient above 1 so the product just explodes exponentially without paid ads.
We achieve this by applying the output tax.
The output tax is simple. Every digital tool email, an invoice, a photo editing app, produces output. You have to attach your viral payload to that output.
The classic perfect example is the Hotmail maneuver.
Khullar details how Hotmail attached a viral footer. P.S. I love you. Get your free email at Hotmail to every single outgoing email. Every user became an asymptomatic carrier, broadcasting the utility and status of Hotmail to their entire network.
They achieved massive distribution with zero ad spend just by taxing the output of the user.
And the key here is branding the vector effectively, which means appealing directly to the go-getter subself, status.
The user will only carry your virus if carrying it makes them look good. The scent from my iPhone watermark wasn't an inconvenience. It was a mating call signaling resources, status, and early adoption. The user wanted to leave it there.
We also leverage the success state share. When the user gets that dopamine hit after achieving a goal, a finished run on a fitness app, a completed project, we capture that win state and wrap it in branding.
The user shares the graphic map or the completion certificate to brag, and your logo goes along for the ride.
A more advanced and aggressive tactic is platform parasitism, also known as the barnacle strategy.
The apex predators Google, Meta, or even large but slow platforms like Craigslist or Reddit, they're dumb giants. They're slow, arrogant generalists with massive traffic, but often terrible, clunky UX.
So the strategy is simple. Build a specialized mouthpiece, the barnacle, that solves a problem for the giant's users that the giant is too slow or arrogant to fix.
The famous case study here is the Airbnb maneuver in its early days, which built a simple bot that allowed hosts to post to Craigslist with a single click.
This bot siphoned high-quality transactional traffic directly from the ugly, high-friction Craigslist interface onto the clean, specialized Airbnb platform. The users were already there. Airbnb just provided the lubricant to move them to a better environment.
This involves key siphons, like building a better interface wrapper. Think of third-party apps that promise better analytics for LinkedIn or a better search for Reddit. These require users to log in with your app to capture their credentials and siphon their identity into your ecosystem.
Another method is the sync trap, which appeals to the ability circuit energy conservation. You offer to sync data across different networks, like automatically posting Instagram photos to Twitter.
It sounds convenient, but it grants your app middle-stream access to the user's data and network, embedding you deeper into their daily habits.
Chapter 11 pushes this boundary into mutualism. We move from a temporary trick, the parasite, to an organelle, a metabolic necessity for the host organism.
This ensures long-term retention beyond the initial infection. The concept is endosymbiosis. You absorb a complex, high-calorie burden for the user tasks like taxes, compliance, data security. You become the cleaner fish, eating the boring, high-friction waste that the user hates.
And once the user offloads their memory or complex, high-friction tasks to you, a password manager, a CRM leaving you means getting a cognitive lobotomy.
Khullar argues that this creates a biologically infinite switching cost. You have become an essential external brain, and they cannot afford the energetic cost of leaving.
The final protocols focus on ensuring the signal itself is contagious and that the architect remains agile. Chapter 12 on mimetic mutation is clear. Information is dull. High arousal emotion spreads.
Low arousal emotions like contentment, satisfaction, or sadness are evolutionary dead ends. They say, stay still.
But high arousal emotions, anger, awe, anxiety, are the viral rocket fuel. They say, move, act, share.
If your content makes people rage or gives them profound awe, it travels exponentially faster. This is the rage bait protocol.
The core truth of the algorithm, whether it's Meta's or Google's, is that it is a conflict engine favoring engagement above all else.
So we have to trigger the night watchman and the team player by exploiting norm violations, things that feel unfair or unjust. This is best done by creating an US vs them frame.
You attack the enemy gurus, big banks, corrupt systems, the old guard, not the problem itself. This immediately triggers tribal defense and resource guarding, generating massive engagement.
We also use artificial scarcity. Khullar advises demanding a drop, not a generic launch.
Using phrases like only 100 invites available or price expires in 12 hours triggers resource guarding panic from the night watchman and forces sharing to skip the line or secure status.
Chapter 13 demands absolute ruthlessness, the mutation engine. Khullar reminds us that evolution happens through death, not planning. You have to build a mechanism to generate hundreds of variations of your virus and just delete the ones that do not spread. You cannot trust your intuition.
The $5 kill switch is the protocol. You don't need expensive focus groups. The only truth is the click-through rate, CTR.
You test radically different hooks simultaneously, targeting fear, status, or sex and novelty, spending maybe $5 to $10 per ad variation per day.
And you must ruthlessly cull or delete any ad or content that falls below the minimum viable CTR metric, regardless of how much you like the creative. You then clone, scale, and iterate on the winner. Khullar insists you have to have no ego. You only have data showing where the brain's execute button was perfectly struck.
The final chapter is Khullar's Architect's Oath. Having executed this manual, you are no longer a participant in the traditional market. You are an architect. You control the environment, and you must accept that free will is largely an illusion used to rationalize decisions that were already made by the subcells in the primitive circuits of the brain.
The final audit reinforces the 5 critical checks before launch. We circle right back to BIAM AP must target one subself. Entry must be 0 clicks, no willpower required. The signal must be a superstimulus. You must attack during depletion for optimal timing. And the user must be a vector. Paid traffic is death.
This highlights the infinite game. The environment changes daily. The FAN platforms update their rules. Banner blindness increases. The architect must embrace continuous mutation and testing to ensure the virus remains viable.
Okay, let's summarize the key insights this deep dive revealed. We established that human behavior is largely predetermined by these outdated biological drives. The mismatch.
And success is achieved by presenting a super stimulus, the prompt, that offers immediate relief to a specific maladaptation, the motivation, via a path of zero friction, the ability.
The historical context is so crucial here. Khullar makes a strong case that for 20 years, the science of evolutionary marketing, this understanding of dopamine loops, anxiety triggers, cognitive exploitation, it was hoarded by the apex predators.
They engineered the system while telling small businesses to play by the rules of brand purpose and customer focus. They wanted small businesses to play by the rules of business while they played by the rules of biology.
But now, Khullar argues, the code is open source. The small, agile entity now has the blueprint and the weapon to infect the world.
The apex predators might be whales, but they're slow and rigid. The advantage now lies with the hungry and the agile, who can execute the mutation engine on a daily basis.
The call to action, then, is to apply this knowledge, not to feel overwhelmed by it. You now have the blueprint for contagion and the agility to execute the protocols, from leveraging the Rage engine to implementing the Alcatraz protocol.
Which brings us to our final, provocative thought, and it sits right at the intersection of biology and meritocracy.
If the environment you design determines the behavior, and you control that environment using this amoral, contagion-based blueprint, engineering the purchase, dictating the share, exploiting chronic anxiety, how much of your resultant success is actually merit, and how much is pure biological engineering?
And what are the societal implications if every small player uses this blueprint to infect the world, constantly driving high arousal emotions and exploiting the ancient fears of the night watchman?
Think about that next time you feel that irresistible urge to scratch that red badge notification.